Welcome back to Personal Branding in Motorsports. I'm TJ Fry, and if you're new to this channel, I bring you into the world of professional driving and also give you some tips and tricks on how to grow your brand, sign sponsors, and build your career behind the wheel. Today, I'm going to go over some of the common problems and hurdles that people run into along their road to becoming professional drivers. Here we go! Alright guys, let's just jump right into it. First and foremost, I've been hearing a ton of stuff from people on how difficult reaching out to sponsors is. They don't know who to contact, they're having trouble getting contacts back, no one's returning phone calls, they're not getting emails back, so on and so forth on down the line. I'm not going to butter it up for you guys. I'm not good at that, so I'm not even going to waste my time. I don't do the positive reinforcement followed by your real enforcement followed by some positive make you feel good shit. No, I don't do that. I just have to be very blunt with you. That's how it is, all right? You have to learn to take some rejection. In fact, you have to learn to take a lot of rejection. It's going to happen, all right? So really what we need to do is build habits for ourselves that are going to increase our ability to avoid feeling personally rejected or having those feelings of doubt when we get those rejections, right? Or when we hear no, or when we don't hear anything back, whatever it may be. Point being, if we're building our own habits to continually send emails, find contact information, reach out to these people, make phone calls, whatever it is, if we're doing that every single day, no matter what your number is, if you're doing that every single day, it's going to become a habit, and then suddenly it becomes much easier to do that. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you one of the books that helped me really build my habits properly and has really been a huge resource for me over the course of my career. So, as you guys know, I use a Kindle to read. Danny got me this for my birthday, and I've been a big fan of it. If you're looking for a Kindle, I'll leave a link to one down below. Frankly, I do like it because it's lightweight and I travel, but honestly, I still kind of like paperbacks too, so it's kind of hit and miss for whatever. But this isn't a Kindle review. This is the book, The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. This guy is the man, all right? So he breaks down what habits really are, how they work, and essentially how we can learn to control our habits and build habits we want, as well as get rid of habits that we don't want. So this was hugely helpful for me. And for those of you that don't know, for a long time I was not like massively, but for a long time I did drink pretty heavily, and I did smoke way too much marijuana. I'm not super proud to admit that. That was all years ago, but these are things that I was habitually engaged in, right? It was a way that I escaped. I'll do a whole video on why I got into those things and what I think I was really getting out of them. But for right now, suffice it to say that I needed to get away from a lot of that. Had a lot of great times, met a lot of great people, but it just wasn't advancing my career. I wasn't going anywhere, and I really wanted to be successful. So those are habits I needed to break, or I felt that I needed to break. Now, I'm not one to preach to you and tell you whether or not you should do those things, but for me, those were habits that I wanted to break. So what I did was I started taking Charles Duhigg's advice and breaking down my habits to figure out where they start, what triggers me into doing or wanting to do something, and then going, okay, wow, this is just a habit. I'm doing this habitually. I'm not even necessarily looking forward to it. So here's how it works. The power of habit. Pretty straightforward. So this is what the cover of the book looks like, as you saw already. There's the name of it, just in case you couldn't see it, and I'll put a link to that down below as well. Along with, for those of you that don't have a whole lot of time, if you sit in traffic every day, I'll leave a link to Audible, and you can download Audible for free for a 30-day trial, as well as a free copy of this book. So you can actually get an audio version of this totally free, along with another book, which I will recommend as well, would be The Miracle Morning. These two books alone have been a huge, huge factor in my success. So Habits can be broken down into 3 steps, all right? There's a cue, or something that causes the habit to happen. There's a routine, which is the habit itself. And then there's a reward. Again, the cue must happen to trigger the habit, to start the process. So what this means is when you have a cue, that's something that you just naturally, like it happens, right? It could be any number of different things, and we'll get into that in just a moment. But this is how a habit works. Something happens, or you do something, or you smell something, or you see something, or whatever it is. Something happens and makes your brain go, oh, well, next thing I gotta do is this. And then you perform that routine or that habit, and then once that's done, there's some sort of reward for doing it, and therefore you ultimately complete the process, right? So cue, routine, and whatever the third one was. Cue, routine, and reward. So those things are the biggest. That is a habit. That's how you break down a habit. So once we've done that, we need to figure out what the cues are, right? So there's 5 different types of them. You have location cues, time-based cues, cues based on emotion, something that you may feel, your emotional state, cues based on the actions of other people, and cues based upon your last action. So suppose, and could even be based on your last action could be a habit itself. So for example, I have noticed recently that when I brush my teeth, I have a habit of not just brushing my teeth. I have to go do something else. I have noticed recently that I've been brushing my teeth and I don't just stand in the bathroom and brush my teeth. I walk around and I do other stuff, or I'm on my phone, or I'm like, it's stupid. I don't know why. But what was happening was I was brushing my teeth, and then my brain was going, it's time to go do something. So I would go do something, and then at some point I'd go, all right, I'm done brushing my teeth, and I'd go back into the bathroom, finish up, and then basically that was the reward, was like, okay, I finished that one thing and now I'm good. It's a silly habit, but it is a simple habit. Now, another habit that I could talk about, so for example, a bad habit maybe. Let's say I come home from work, it's been a really long day, so I sit down, I come home from work, that's the cue. Like I walk into my house, I take my shoes off, right? There's the cue. Then automatically I'm going to sit down on the couch and turn the TV on, and I'm just going to veg out and relax for a little bit. Now, how many of us have done this? You come home from work, you just want to relax, right? Well, that makes perfect sense. The problem is that the dopamine hits that you actually get from watching TV and from, laughing or having an emotional response or enjoying something something from the TV that you enjoy, right? When you get some sort of enjoyment, you get a dopamine hit in your brain. When that happens, that is the reward. And so ultimately you sit down and it becomes this habit that every day you come home and you sit down, you turn the TV on, right? And it just keeps growing. So I would challenge you guys to try and notice those habits that may not seem like detrimental habits at all. Try to notice those habits and say, all right, what could I really be doing instead? Like maybe come home and instead of sitting down and turning the TV on, sit down and grab a book, or sit down and make 3 phone calls to potential sponsors. There's any number of ways that you could change it. But if you take that cue of coming home and sitting down and take that cue and make the routine different, then you can totally change that habit. So moving right along. Of course, we also have the dopamine spike that I was mentioning right there. When a habit is new, what researchers have found is that it comes after the reward. So for example, like I said just a moment ago, when you sit down in front of the TV, you watch something that makes you laugh, that's a dopamine hit, right? Like it's enjoyable. Your brain goes, that was funny. I want to watch more of this show. For me, that's Archer. Love Archer. But anyway, if I'm sitting there and I'm watching something funny like Archer, I'll laugh and I get that dopamine hit. That comes after the reward. But the longer I do this habit and the more I perform this habit and the more I rely on this cue of just sitting down on the couch, turning on the TV, Now I'm starting to get that dopamine hit because I know the reward is coming, right? Now I'm starting to get that dopamine hit because subconsciously I know that I'm going to get it eventually. So what's actually happening is that dopamine hit is moving closer and closer to the cue. So essentially, like, as soon as I sit down, my brain is going, yeah, here it comes. All right, let's do this. Yeah, there it is. All right, cool. So before I've even watched TV, I've actually given myself that dopamine hit. That can become a very dangerous thing because it becomes a self-perpetuating cycle where it's essentially like as soon as you have that cue, it's just boom, there it is. So all you have to do is have that cue, and then it's just like, well, now I know what's coming, and your brain is just like pumping dopamine. We can get into a whole bunch of things on dopamine and our current society's addiction to dopamine and how it's such a numbing chemical to begin with. But the fact is, the closer, the more ingrained the habit becomes, the closer that dopamine, or the earlier that dopamine hit happens, and that means that it's becoming more and more ingrained and therefore more difficult to break. So that's something that we need to be very careful of. So moving right along, a written plan is huge. This is what Duhigg talks about a lot, and he talks about how writing down a plan is hugely beneficial. I've heard this so many places. I'm sure you guys have too. Write down your goals. Doesn't just mean write down like, I want to make $100 million. Fine, write that down. That's great. But write down more specific, more achievable goals for yourself, whatever that may be. Maybe that is achievable for you. And if it is, in which case, kudos. Good for you. But write down your goals. Write down your plans. Write down everything that you can, because when you write them down, and I don't mean write like type them in your phone or type them on a computer. I mean write them down. I told you guys a while ago, I don't carry a PDA. I carry a PAD and a PEN, and I write shit all the time. It's super, super easy to do, and whenever I have a good idea, I write it down because I'm much more likely to remember it that way. And not only remember it, I'm much more likely to follow through on it. The physical act of writing something down helps your brain really solidify and cement that idea into your brain. So I highly recommend that whatever your plan may be for doing something, whether that's developing a daily social media strategy, or whether that's committing to how many people or potential sponsors you're going to contact every day, write it the fuck down. All right, that's huge. And finally, habits influence other habits. This is real straightforward. Basically, like, if you start building certain types of habits, they're going to encourage other types of habits. And so therefore, if you can intelligently plan your habits, it's going to be a lot easier to kind of like shoestring them on each other, or like leapfrog them. So one leads to another, leads to another, leads to another. That's really beneficial. So for me, what I did was I combined The Miracle Morning by Elrod, which I love. I'll link down to that one as well. And of course, you can get that book as well as the one that we're talking about now, with Charles Duhigg, The Power of Habit. You can get both of those for free as part of that Audible trial. But point being, I kind of combined both of those. So what I did was I wake up every morning at 5 a.m. and the first thing I do is I walk down, I turn off my alarm, which is right next to my toothbrush at the sink in the bathroom, and then I brush my teeth. That's the first thing I do. Turn off the alarm, brush my teeth. Then I sit down and I meditate. Once I'm done meditating, I fill out my journal for the day. Once I'm done with that, I visualize. Then I combine another book that I read that I'll get into with you later, Hyper Performance, and that has a couple different types of visualization, but then I visualize the work, not only the end goal, but I'll visualize the work it takes to achieve that goal. I do a little bit of exercise, I read, and I follow through with the rest of my Miracle Morning. But I do it all in that same order every single day, and it becomes a habit so that now I kind of flow from one to the other. Once I'm done with that, it's usually, by that time, it's like 6:15 or so in the morning, and I'm awake, I feel good, I'm ready to roll, and I can actually jump in and start filming and editing videos. I can get up and walk Camber. I can make breakfast for Danny, which I really need to do more often. I can make coffee, I can do whatever I want. But point being, like, once I'm done with all that stuff, I have that habit rolling, and it's so much easier now. So I'm pretty much going to leave it at that. But again, I really, really do want to stress to you guys, check this book out. It is huge. Start to learn what habits you have that you don't even realize are habits. We all know we have bad habits. We all have good habits that we don't know about. But if you understand how a habit works, it's going to be hugely beneficial for you to start changing bad ones into good ones and amplifying the good ones that you have, helping them work for you. So with that said, again, I'll leave links down to all of this in the description. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know in those comments down below. And also, when you do read these books, either The Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod or The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg, what do you think of them? I want to know what you guys think about these books. Have they been helpful for you in the past? And do you feel they will continue to be helpful for you in the future? So anyways, hope you guys are doing well. I will catch up with you soon. Always remember, do what drives you, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Bye-bye. Bloop. I guess I didn't stumble too much on that one, but I still kind of feel like an idiot. Terrible intro. Atrocious. I'm doing that again. I've been hearing a lot of... This is the book right here. This is by Charles That is not the right book. This is the right book right here. This is the one we were looking for. There it is.